Hello everyone, at this Mpasho channel. It is my hope that you're doing well. Um, Today we are going to look at underdevelopment and the dependency in Africa. Well, it is my hope that you'll find the lesson or other lesson enjoyable and intellectually fulfilling. Be ready to watch. Make sure you like, subscribe, and watch. Also, you can share to your friends to watch. Um, in our lesson, we shall borrow or interact mostly with Walter Rodney's work. Walter Rodney wrote a lot of scholarly work. He also wrote some of the books, but we shall be interacting with this one. That is how Europe underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. So our ideas, models, we shall be borrowing them from Walter Rodney's book. That is how a European underdeveloped Africa. We are going to divide our work into two. That is, we are going to look at other development. We shall look at factors that leads to other development. We shall also look at dependency and factors that leads to dependency, and also some other factors that manifest dependency in third world countries or developing countries. And also we shall look at the two theories of dependence, that is dependency theory and world system theory. Underdevelopment. The concept of underdevelopment in Africa refers to the economic, social, and political conditions prevalent in many African countries that are characterized by low levels of industrialization, inadequate infrastructure, widespread poverty, limited access to education and healthcare, political instability, and dependency on primary commodity export. So that is the concept of the term underdeveloped. Rodin, he argues that a combination of power, politics, and economic exploitation of Africa by Europeans lead to poor state of African political and economic development evident in the late 20th century. Underdevelopment can also refer to incomplete or insufficient development in terms of the state economy, social, and political backwardness. That's according to Walter. Now, since we've looked at underdevelopment, let's look at factors that lead to underdevelopment. One of the factors that lead to underdevelopment is colonial legacy. The legacy of colonization has or had a profound impact on Africans' development. Many African countries were exploited for their natural resources and subjected to systems of governance that were designed to benefit colonial powers rather than governance that were, rather than the local population. So the exploitation of these resources were aimed at, benefiting the colonial powers, but not local population or local people. So this legacy has left behind institutional weakness and economic structures that hinder development. Another factor of underdevelopment, or a factor that leads to underdevelopment, is political instability. We say that political instability include corruption, authoritarianism, and conflict is a major barrier to development in many African countries. Weak governance and lack of accountability often result in mismanagement of resources, stifling economic growth and social progress. Another factor that linked to underdevelopment is economic challenges. Many African countries faces numerous economic challenges, including inadequate infrastructure, limited access to capital, high levels of debt, and overdependence on primary commodities for export earnings. So basically, these smaller countries, or these the world countries, or developing countries, or third world countries, as you could call them, thrive in a situation whereby they primarily overdepend on primary commodities for export earnings. So they earn their some of their coins through exporting these primary commodities. So this factor makes it difficult for African economies to diversify and develop sustainable source of growth. Another factor is a social factor. Social factors such as poverty, inequality, and lack of access to education and healthcare also contribute to underdevelopment in Africa. So these factors are not only hinder human development, but also limit economic productivity and social cohesion. Another factor, or the last factor according to our lesson, is the external factors. External factors such as unfavorable trade policies, unequal terms of trade, and international debt burdens also play a role in perpetuating underdevelopment in Africa. So you find that additionally, the impact of climate change, including droughts, floods, desertification, poses very serious challenges to agriculture and food security in many African countries. So we've just tackled just only 5 factors. There are so many factors that leads to underdevelopment, but for now, we've just talked about the 5 only factors. The first part of our work, that is underdevelopment, factors that lead to underdevelopment. So now let's dive into dependency in Africa. So as you can see, this is an example, for instance, or just as you can see in this picture, there is a figure of African map, that is African continent. You'll see that on the top of that there are 2 people here with the ladders. One is on the top. We could say that that is developed nations or countries. You can see they have ladders. They're helping someone to climb higher on where they hurl through by the means of a ladder. So this is just an explanation or an illustration of how Africa depend on other developed countries or other or nations or those developed nations. So this is just an example, an illustration of the situation that happens in Africa or those third world countries, or rather the third or developing countries. Well, a dependency in Africa refers to the continent's reliance on international sources such as foreign aid, foreign investment, and export of raw materials for economic growth and development. So this dependency is rooted in historical factors such as colonialism, which shaped Africans' economic structures to serve the interests of colonial powers rather than local population. When talking about a dependency in Africa, we can't leave behind without looking into some of the theories or theories that explains the dependency in Africa. So these are theories of dependency, and we see that, for example, a theory of dependency theory is the theory that explains how poor countries depend on rich countries. It goes on and suggests or indicates that rich countries causes dependency by destabilizing the rich countries and causing them to be in need. So now theories of dependency in Africa. We have 2 theories of dependency. That is, we have a dependency theory, and the second theory is world system theory. So these are 2 theories that that explains dependency. All right, so let's look at dependency theory. Well, dependency theory, this theory emerged in the year 1950s and 1960s as a critique of modernization theory, which suggested that developing countries could achieve economic development by emulating paths of developed nations. Dependency theory posits that underdevelopment of poor nations is not a stage on the path of development, but rather a consequence of their integration into the global capitalist system. So according to dependency theory, developing countries are structurally dependent on developed nations due to historical processes of colonization, unequal trade relations, and the domination of multinational corporations. So that's the theory goes on or emphasizes the role of external factors or forces in perpetuating underdevelopment, such as unequal exchange, exploitation of natural resources, and the imposition of economic policies by more powerful nations or international institutions. So dependency theory advocates for strategies such as import substitution, industrialization, and economic nationalism to reduce dependency on external actors and promote self-sufficiency. So now let's look at so we've looked at dependency theory. Now let's look at a world system theory. So world system theory was developed by sociologist Immanuel Wallerstein in the year 1970s as a framework for analyzing the global capitalist system as a single interconnected entity. This theory views the world economy as a complex system characterized by hierarchical relationships between core, semi-peripheral, and peripheral regions. The core regions are economically dominant and exploit peripheral regions for resources, labor, and markets. Semi-peripheral regions occupy an intermediate position, benefiting from their relationship with the core regions, but also exploiting the peripheral regions. So world system theory emphasizes the historical and structural processes that shape the global with the inequalities such as colonization, imperialism, and the expansion of capitalism. According to this perspective, the modern world system emerged in the 19th century with the rise of European capitalism and the colonization of the Americans, Asia, and Africa. So basically that was world system theory. Let's now look at the key factors or the key aspects that contribute to dependency in Africa. One of the key aspects that contribute to the dependency in Africa is resource exploitation. You'll find that African countries often rely heavily on the export of raw materials such as oil, minerals, and agricultural products. However, the terms of trade are often unfavorable, with African countries receiving low prices for their exports compared to the value added by importing countries. So this perpetuates a cycle of dependency on primary commodity export. Another factor is debt burden. We find that many African countries carry significant debt owed to the international financial institutions and foreign governments. A debt servicing consumes a large portion of government revenue, diverting funds away from essential services and development projects. So this creates a certain cycle that also we could say another factor that leads to to dependency is the foreign aid dependency. While foreign aid can provide vital support for development initiatives, it can also create a dependency. It can also create a dependency if not managed effectively. So some of the African countries rely heavily on foreign aid from basic services and infrastructure, which can undermine local ownerships and sustainability. For instance, you may find that, for instance, in Africa, for instance, that relies heavily on China, foreign as a foreign aid or a donor. So sometimes they are given loans with other conditions or strings attached to those loans. All right, so another factor is unequal trade relationships. You find that African countries or third world countries or developing countries or nations often faces barriers to exporting value-added goods and face unfair competition from subsidizing products from developed countries. So this limits their ability to diversify their economies and also adds to their dependency on primary commodity exports. Another factor is political instability and corruption. You'll find that political instability and corruption in many African countries hinder economic growth and discourage foreign investment. So this perpetuates a cycle of underdevelopment and dependency by discouraging local and foreign investments in productive sectors of the economy. Another factor is brain drain. Brain drain. So you'll find that skilled professionals often leave Africa in search of better opportunities or green pastures abroad. So leading to a loss of human capital and expertise. So this exacerbates dependency by depriving African countries of the skills and the knowledge needed for their economic development. Now let's look at the manifestation of dependency in Africa. How can you tell that, how can you tell that these developing nations or third-world countries are dependent on these other countries? All right, one of the manifestation is resource extraction. You'll find that foreign companies exploit African resources for profit, often with low regard for local communities or environmental sustainability. So this perpetuates a pattern of resource dependence and environmental degradation. Another manifestation is unequal trade relationships. You'll find that many African countries often face barriers to export value-added goods and face unfair competition from subsidized products from developed countries. So this reinforces their dependency on primary commodity export, which has low. It's not that's not something. All right. Another factor is the foreign aid dependency. You'll find that many African countries rely on foreign aid for basic services and infrastructure development. While aid can be beneficial, it can also create a cycle of dependency and undermine the local ownership and accountability. Another factor is brain drain. You'll find that skilled professionals from Africa often migrate to developed countries in search of better opportunities, leading to loss of human capital and exacerbating dependency on foreign expertise. Another factor or a manifestation is neocolonialism. Some argue that African countries or Africa countries are to experience forms of neocolonialism, whereby foreign powers and multinational corporations exert influence over political and economic decision making to serve their own interests, perpetuating dependency on and exploitation. So that's basically the manifestation of the dependency of that world countries or developing. All right, what do you see in this picture? This picture, I just intentionally put it there to demonstrate or illustrate that act of dependency. So these people are depending on something. They are asking for something. They are begging for something. So that's how African countries, rather than developed countries or developing nations, do to the developed nations or countries, also called the core countries. The energy dependency, whereby African countries are dependent on Western economies for much of their energy. Even oil-rich countries don't have the refineries needed to turn their crude oil into gasoline or heating oil, etc., etc., etc. Well, in our presentation, we've tackled underdevelopment and dependency in Africa, where we've looked at underdevelopment and dependency. We've looked at factors that lead to underdevelopment. We've also looked at factors that lead to dependency in Africa, and also we've looked at the manifestation or factors that manifest dependency in Africa, and also we've also looked at the two types, the two theories of dependence, that is dependency theory and a world system theory. So basically that marks the end of our presentation for today. Remember to watch, make sure you've shared the video, like, subscribe. Until next time, it's a goodbye. See you.